I gave permission, maybe.
Oh,
Now it says
there we
it's
go.
recording. Yeah.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Good call out. Thanks, Chad. Okay, cool. So there's a large refactor and it deals with permissions. This came up last time. We talked in the last session of backend pairing. We talked about how to safely refactor a permission, right? Like we talked about test harnesses and writing tests, and I was able to come up with like a shared example we can use. So I feel pretty good about that. And then I've also come up with some other like strategies for how to refactor. And where I find myself now is I actually found that I am not the first person to have considered this refactor. There is a larger effort from another group. I guess they're now part of pods, like the organization group, to unify groups and projects. So let me look at this conversation I was having because there's some good links.
You mean
Okay.
the movement toward namespaces that's the same as groups and projects all in one?
Exactly. So there's this larger effort happening from that group. I don't know the exact status of that large project, but it's a large project, right? It touches many parts of the code base. And then as part of that, we're going to want to consolidate group and project policies. So as we unify everything group and project into one thing for namespaces, we're also going to want to unify the policies. I was able to quantify yesterday. This is why I was looking at my activity because I was trying to find the issue I created. And the issue is is there an easy way to find like issues I created recently? I opened this issue. I think this is
for
it.
issues.
Just search.
I usually, yeah, and filter for author.
Okay. Well, I found it in my activities, so that's good. It wasn't too far away. So this is a big effort. We currently have 354 abilities in project policy and 192 abilities in group policy. And so I've come up in this issue with a way to like, on a one-off basis, how do we consolidate? But I guess the larger conversation I wanted to have is, does anybody have guidance or experience at GitLab kind of kicking off a larger refactor like this and the best way to kind of include other groups? Who are you pointing at?
Chad, I know he has at least done one large refactor here that he shared with me as inspiration for a refactor that I have yet to do.
Okay.
So I know at least in my
divide and conquer.
Yeah, I know Chad has done it, and he gave me some good advice. I just haven't had the time to take it on. It's one of my goals towards maybe becoming a staff engineer is to actually do that refactor. So
okay, great.
This was a great conversation.
Every refactor is different, but you just have to sort of break it down. The one general piece of advice I think is, this is maybe even more applicable since we're now finally on Ruby 3, is to try to introduce some type safety. Like even before Ruby 3, like have named parameters rather than just positional parameters. Like when I was doing like some of the for the CAPTCHA stuff that I did, that's maybe the one Terry is talking about, and I had to refactor a bunch of the services to like introduce passing down this spam params parameter. And it's like, I don't know if I'm going to catch all of these things. How do I even know where they're being called? There's no way to know. Ruby is weakly typed and not null safe. So what I did is an initial refactor to introduce named parameters into the central point that it was being called. And then at least if there was any unit test coverage executing the line of code for the caller, it would fail because it was not passing a named parameter, it was passing a positional. So that let me find all of these places that was touching this code that otherwise I would have had no way to even know where they were. So I have no idea if that's applicable to this policy stuff, but that's like one of the generally applicable tricks to huge refactors like this in a Ruby code base.
Okay, so when you did that, when you added that named parameter, that would have caused everything that was calling that service to fail because it
Yeah.
was just doing positional arguments. But then that makes it sound like you just fixed all of that yourself. Is that how it went? You just did a
It's
big fix, or?
like the way it worked out, like in this particular case, because of the services, there was like multiple services and this sort of inheritance, unfortunately not composition hierarchy. And I like only fixed one little piece of that tree, and I never got to the other stuff. There's still like a pending issue. So like I changed it on like one little area of it, but didn't do the whole thing all at once. But if you're gonna do a big bang, that's a good way to do it because it gives you, that's what's great about type safety. It gives you a nice descriptive error message. It's like, hey, you didn't pass the spam params argument here. And in the future, when people don't do that, and it worked out well because I'm like, okay, in the future, when people try to make changes, that will also let them know, hey, it's asking me to pass spam params here. Maybe I should think about the implications of CAPTCHA here and whether I need to pass this rather than just like ignore it and pass nil. And it did come up with a community contribution, and like they were just going to ignore it, and I somehow got mentioned on the EMR, and I said, no, we especially for this, which was like bulk creating epics, I'm like, this is actually an attack vector. And I asked security and they're like, yeah, this is kind of an attack vector for CAPTCHA for bulk spamming, and therefore we should add spam protection here. But that pulled this poor community contributor into, he had to pull off another piece of this branch and modify, dozens of files, which they started on a separate MR and then got bogged down and never did it. And then I felt like bad, but I'm like, this had to be done. It was the security thing. But now I've like sidetracked his feature by making him do this refactor that we didn't finish ourselves, and that's where it stands. So it was like I felt good that it did what it was supposed to do, but then the morass of code debt that is the GitLab monolith negatively impacted the ability for everyone to contribute. That's the end of that story.
Yeah,
Anyway,
I think
Terry knows this. If you ask me a question, you'll just get a long story. That's always the case.
Well, so Terry, what was the refactor that you were considering? Do you remember what it was?
Oh no, I've just been like chunking away at it from a side level, but like we have this thing called the search service, which doesn't
Should we look at
actually.
Is it in here?
Like the moral of that story, like there was a point to it. The point is like, if at all possible, do the whole thing now.
Yeah. I had refactored things more back when I first thought about it, when I first got feedback from a maintainer that this is like needs to be done different. Now we just keep adding more stuff onto it, so it's not going to be. Yeah, it's fine though.
Is this it? Are you in the
yeah,
search
that's
service
part
or
of
something else?
it. Like, no, that is the search service, but there's actually like no execute method, and there has like other methods that it has to run to like actually execute the work, and it serves up like 3 or 4 different types of results. It's just very confusing. What I had refactored that was kind of related to this is we also have a method called search service in this file, and like instance variables called search service, which sometimes were like search presenters. I don't know. It's just like there were so many search services. I find it really hard to like explain how this code works to people who were trying to work with it, who weren't familiar with it, like new people that join our team or someone that's like trying to review the code. So I've been slowly like chipping away at things. But yeah, eventually I will like to like redo this whole page. But that's like my dream for the year. I just need to finish a few other things. I just find it to be, when I was trying to delve into this, and as you go down into those services and then into like what they actually return, it's very confusing. I would agree.
I find name parameters help a lot with that, and that's why I would love to see us. Now
like we don't have any
Ruby
of those.
3, really start getting more type safety. Take advantage of the RBS stuff that we can type return types as well, not just
Mhm.
arguments.
I really like
Mhm.
that. I'm gonna really think about that as I look at MRs for review and also like work on my own MRs if we have the opportunity to change over to that. Because it never
Yeah.
really occurred to me that that would help with refactors and also like if you're not sure who's calling code or
Mhm.
Yeah, if you haven't worked in a type-safe language, like I
I
briefly
have.
like went to Kotlin and like I don't call Java type-safe. It's just like annoyingly typed. But like my brief experience with Elm and Kotlin, it's like, oh, this is wonderful. It catches all of my stupid errors for me. I don't even have to write all of the middle of the pyramid tests. The compiler does it for me. So I would love to move more towards that world in Ruby now that we have
Mhm.
Ruby 3.
Mhm.
Yeah, I've
Mhm.
only done Java. I took like a Kotlin course, but I never really got into it enough to fall in love with what made people like it so much.
Oh yeah, Java is
Mhm.
just annoying, but Kotlin,
Oh yeah,
it's the
it's
type
annoying.
inference. Like Java
Yeah.
makes you declare everything everywhere, but modern languages like Rust or Elm or Kotlin, they have good type inference. You declare it once, and then the compiler knows every other place you use that function everywhere in your code. Like it's going to tell you if you got the types wrong, as opposed to Java, you have to like annotate it every single place everywhere, like in
It's
vanilla Java,
very like
which is just a pain. You
wordy.
don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But in a
Yeah, I think
language
I
that you
worked
just do
in
it once, it's beauty.
I think I've worked in code bases in the past where I don't know if it was a Rubocop rule or just like a rule of thumb was always use named arguments if there's more than one. Like you don't have to name one argument. You're allowed to, that's a freebie. But after
I love
that, you
that
always
rule
have to
for
use named
Ruby.
arguments. Yeah.
Oh, totally. I'd be behind that 100%.
Mhm. Mhm. Okay, we can open the Rubocop MR and see who
Or
comes out of the
maybe
woodwork.
with Ruby 3, maybe RBS is a better, less verbose way because like that, like once you get to like 3, 4, 5 arguments, like you're like hitting the line length like every
Yeah.
single time and having to wrap it. And then you're like, okay, well, what's the pattern from the gang of 4? I have to pull out a parameters object to this. And it's like, oh, really? Just let me have my 4 arguments.
Or disable the line length copy.
No, you bad person, Marco.
Nice, nice.
I don't want to be the bad person the first time we meet.
I never break that
Yeah.
rule. I'm like, I don't care if I have to. I like long names, and I never go. Sometimes my lines are like spanning 3 or 4 lines.
So in terms of this particular refactor, or like what I'm thinking about here, I guess the interesting thing I discovered is I found this whole history of another group that had basically been like, and this conversation has more, but basically they were like, yeah, we want to take everything out of project policy. And now let's remember their project policy is huge. It touches so many parts of the code base. So we're not going to get rid of it in one MR. We're not going to get rid of it in 10 MRs. They were like, oh, we want to move everything to project namespace as part of this effort of moving from project and group to namespace. I've never known that. Like I'm on the off team. I probably added quite a few things to project policy because I just didn't have the knowledge that that was even an effort that was underway. So I guess the question I have for this particular effort is how could we better, like I feel like you can't even socialize changes like this, right? You can't put it in the engineering weekly and hope that people see it. You have to like raise an error when somebody adds a new line to project policy or something and be like, hey, did you consider adding it to the project namespace policy?
Yeah, you
Do
have
we
to
ever
write a
do anything like
Rubocop,
that?
write a
Yeah.
Rubocop rule, or just go ahead and do the whole refactor all at once. I think those are the only two.
Yeah, I feel like either
Actual
like a
valid
bot,
answers.
a rule, yeah. You have to there I definitely see those, whether it's like the bot or a Rubocop rule.
And even with Rubocop, we just saw from Marco, like that doesn't make people do it.
I don't do it. I just suggested
Or
You're
like
the
a
devil's
test.
advocate.
I guess you could add a test that fails if there are new lines in a new file. I'm not sure. I've never done.
Yeah, like I've done that before, like time bomb type tests that usually I only do that like if there's a config or something, or like there's a, you know, this golden list of like all of the things that you need to handle, all of the cases, and they all need to have like a class implementing them, for example. And like if you add a new case, like blow up to say, all right, there should be exactly these things here, and if somebody ever adds another one, I'm gonna fail this random unit test with a very descriptive error message that says, hey, go here and
Yeah.
add this thing.
I feel like that file should have some notation in it. It's like this is like being phased out, it's being deprecated. This, and I've seen that. I just can't think of a good example in the code.
Oh, the
It's like,
services was that was in a place of the services, like the old Uber superclass for the services hierarchy, like said, don't use this one, use the new one. And that's a good approach too. Like
yeah.
a blaring comment right at the top of it.
Yeah,
But
I
they
think,
only
yeah.
see that if they open the superclass, which whoever does that.
Yeah, I think a comment combined with a failing pipeline or something that wouldn't let an MR merge. Like, because I think you have to stop people from being able to merge something that like actually needs to be fixed. The minute you surface it as a warning, as a maintainer, I'm like, it's like allowed to fail.
Right.
So, I mean,
And if you write the failing test, like you can have a like a custom matcher in our spec or whatever, that's what they call custom errors. Like have that thing just spit out a paragraph explaining exactly what they need to do and why, and give the link to this and instructions how to do it and all of that.
So do we have any examples we can think of to look at to base this off of? Because I like this idea of a test.
Well,
I'm
you
guessing
just
we've
have
done
to
it
figure
before.
out how you would write the logic to detect if the thing you want to be done is not being done, and then like just throw that in a test with the. And like you
Yeah.
don't even need to write a custom matcher. You can just have this test living, I don't know, some random place that does this check and it fails, right? So when it fails, they're going to go to the line, and then right there you can just have the wall of text, like a block above it. Important, read this. Here's what you need to do. Be a good citizen. Don't do what you're about to do. Do this instead. But as long as you can write a piece of logic that like failed when, you know, to prevent the thing, you just throw that in the test and dump it somewhere that makes sense. Like it's sort of a generally applicable thing, maybe like at the top of the module hierarchy in the spec, like make a brand new spec file that just holds it or something if it's not specific to a single model.
Could it be done with Danger instead? Because with Danger, you could check if that file is modified and maybe throw a warning on the comment. Because there's also one thing to keep in mind with the movement to namespaces is that not everything is actually ready to move to namespaces because there are some bugs. So if you write a specs that always fails, you kind of block people from doing something.
Yeah, that's a really good point. The spec approach is like if there's guaranteed a way for them to fix it, and the like, can you ignore danger failures? Like, how do you do that?
If you only add it as a warning instead of an error, you can only warn the people to, okay, you're making this change to the project policy, but you could you move it to the namespace policy instead?
Yeah, I guess danger is like a little more of a stern warning than Rubocop. Like it's a spectrum. Like Rubocop is like, I'm gonna ignore that. Danger is like, no, really, you should do this. And then the test is like, you're not gonna merge unless you do this, but you have to make sure that it's possible.
Yeah, I guess danger has the issue that Terry was talking about, where people might ignore it, but then you're like you were saying, maybe we do need to allow people to ignore this.
At least maybe start there and see.
Yeah.
How do you ignore things on danger? Like that's not a
no, I feel like if it's like if danger is set to fail, then you can't. But if it is a warning, like you'll get warnings like, oh, the title's not, you know, whatever, or like you need to add subtype label and you didn't.
In that case, I think Rubocop if you can write the rule, which you can't always do. Sometimes it's hard to write Rubocop rules, is better. And then you know, in the big list of ignored things, you have that file of the Rubocop ignores rather than doing it on a per line level everywhere. And then that is at least an indicator for the future, like, hey, here's all the ones that we couldn't do it for. But again, that's broken Windows.
Yeah. No, I think I could do a Rubocop rule because we can count the number of abilities per policy class. And so we could say if the number goes up, raise an error with Rubocop, like it could always go down, which is good. Like we want to be chipping away and removing abilities from project policy RB. But if that number ever increased with an MR, then we could say, oh, you know, why did you add a policy to this class? It should be added somewhere else.
How would you know what the right number is though? Because that's
whatever
the
current.
As you fix them.
Oh, I guess I was thinking you could.
Oh, compared to the upstream, you'd have
the
to
upstream, yeah, to master.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't.
What if someone adds a new policy and removes one?
Then they get around it. Sneaky. They're sneaky. Okay, these are good ideas. Yeah, I like that idea. I mean, it definitely has to be a multi-pronged approach, right? Like you probably do have to socialize the change with like an engineering weekly thing, a code comment, maybe a test, maybe Dangerbot.
Maybe starting with the Rubocop might be, a good first step. I've never written one. I don't know how to.
I've done like a couple. They're tricky.
Yeah, sorry. Go on.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, the issue with Rubocop is maybe that it's hard to discover because you get a failing job and you see the error. But if we make it fail the job, we block the MR. And like I mentioned, if there's something that you can't actually move to the namespace yet due to some other bugs, you block the MR basically. Well,
with Rubocop, you can do the Rubocop ignore, right? Or put it in the common list of ignored.
Okay, so okay.
There's two ways. You can ignore it on Rubocop on the line level, or there's like the whole list of
the ignore file
directory under config of all the cops that have things ignored. That's what they'll often do in the big cases like this, where there's a bunch of them.
Yeah, and that's what I saw Peter did something really cool. So this is a little bit of a different issue, but it relates to policies. He added a spec. Actually, it's not Rubocop, or is it? Basically, we had an issue where people were adding policies that don't exist. So if you add a policy check that doesn't exist, it actually doesn't raise an error. It just returns false every time. So if you say like can user like hold iPhone, it's like, well, that's not an ability we have, but no, they can't. So this was a problem because in some cases we had these in the code and there was not an obvious way to know. So Peter and this MR added this check. And then it was cool because there's this whole ignore file. These are all of the policies we have referenced in the code that don't actually exist. So they always return false. I guess this is the to-do. I thought this was Rubocop.
That looks like a one-off thing that he came up with. The Rubocop ones live like under.
Yeah, they would have like a Rubocop directory, but it's built like with a similar
style.
I feel like.
Let me find them. I know where they are.
Because it has like to-do files. Because I see a lot of like community contributors will help out with that stuff a lot because it's nice to be able to say, oh, here are all the exceptions that need to be fixed, and they can kind of like chunk away at them individually.
It's .rubocop _ to do at the root of the repo, and like there's a directory for it's like sub-organized. Like that is the .rubocop to do.
Okay. Oh, and there's a bunch of like individual ones.
So
like
many YAML files with so many entries.
Wow.
Like the living embodiment of our technical debt.
So much to clean up. Okay. Well, where are the Rubocop rules defined? I always have a hard time finding them.
They're in a separate repo, aren't they?
No, I see them. No, I think they're in just Rubocop. No?
Yeah. Right. Code reuse helpers. Code reuse. This is the one we had. There was a thread recently on code reuse. Were any of you participating in that one? There was basically someone was saying that we oh, is it code reuse or is it what is the one where it doesn't want you to use active record methods
that
directly
one, that
outside
one.
of active record model?
Yeah, there's exceptions for that. Like, I think that was that one because there's exceptions for that just littered throughout the code.
Yeah. And so the I thought it was really interesting if we look at the issues, not helpers, but just code reuse. Someone was saying that we basically like we ignored this so often that like we should just get rid of it. It was like an interesting discussion.
Yeah.
If anyone wants to chime in. Because this is actually very on topic because I think the original idea behind this COP was that we were going to do a big refactor where we stopped using all active record methods outside of active record models, which makes sense. But like nobody ever took on that effort. And so instead we just have a COP that raises every time we add a new reference. And it's like, well, why? Like it's already everywhere. So like, what's the point?
Yeah, the rules are under Rubocop COP. I think what I was thinking of is like if you break a base rule, that like lives in Rubocop itself, and you have to sort of go look at it, or there's some other ones.
The ones that are like the built-in COPs versus the custom ones that we've written.
Yeah, or maybe I'm thinking of Prettier, like one of the other linters. There's some one of these static linters that lives. Some of the stuff lives in another repo.
Okay. Yeah, I've seen some cool work of people adding like Rubocop, interesting Rubocop rules. I don't feel very advanced in the world of adding custom Rubocop checks.
They're not that, like what I did when I had to do one is just sort of find one that was similar to what I wanted to do and just looked at it and
yeah, we should add one.
Changed it.
Do you want to add one right now?
Sure. Do you have an idea of one or of
the one that you want to add? Let's add
okay.
that one. I don't know.
Okay.
Let's someone just add it. I don't have anything. Well, I have stuff to work on. I don't want to work on it right now.
Let's give it a try.
I had like 12 code reviews assigned to me today, so I'm good.
Oh my gosh, I saw you mention that.
A mental health week after the 3-day weekend, and then like I was sick, and then my partner was post surgery, and I'm like not feeling getting back into work mode at all.
Well, I hope you're feeling better, and I hope your partner's healing up. Surgery's tough. Yeah, I took family and friends day and baked something for myself, and I was very happy with that.
I played video games all day. Like I don't play that often. I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna do like a spa day.
Yeah, I don't bake that often, so I was in the same boat. I'm like, I'm doing something for me today, and I almost want them to rename it "Family, Friends, and Self" or something, or self.
Exactly.
Because it's really become self-care days for me.
Yeah.
By the way, I guess no one is really going to go move everything out of project and group policy into namespace policy because the last change to that file is mine and it was 6 months old.
Yeah.
Well, bless you for trying. You did something.
By making this COP, we're at least like codifying this giant YAML file. Like, here's the debt, and if community contributors ever want to just come in droves and fix these things, they can.
I would suggest if you make this and you have that debt, like when they have the next hackathon, give it the right tags, make sure it has enough information there. People will pick it up.
Yeah.
If you have enough good info in there, and you will get trust, you will get MRs. So many.
Yeah. Great. Yeah, I was thinking I need to do some kind of a mass import of issues or something. I don't know. I need to figure out how to even define those issues because again, there's 354 policies in here. 354 abilities defined in project policy.
What I've seen folks do is just create like a checkbox or something, or in an issue, one issue. You don't have to create like so many issues, just create one.
Oh, okay.
And then folks can check it off and link their MR.
Okay.
That might be an easier route.
That's honestly the way I manage my own work. Like it's pointless to make an issue for your MR if you're the only one making up the work and doing it yourself. I just have one epic with a giant list of checkboxes and
Oh,
MRs. Like for
really?
the CAPTCHA stuff, that's what I did, and for the
Oh,
GitLab flavor markdown spec, that's what I did. Like
that's good
literally
to
just
know.
dozens and dozens of checkboxes in an epic with MRs.
Although checking a box is not as satisfying as closing an issue. So I don't know.
It is. Like I've tuned myself for that dopamine hit. I'm like, yeah. And then also it's nice because if you put the link to the MR and with the plus, it shows merged after it. So you're like, oh, I know I forgot to check this one. And then you don't even have to remember.
Okay.
These
Okay.
kind of issues are actually quite often taken on yeah, they do a lot of these issues during hackathons because last 3 hackathons that I participated, there were people going through these kind of issues. Like there's this amount of cops or errors and broken down, for example, in chunks of 10, and each contributor goes over one of those issues and closes that issue.
Yeah, it's a little, checkboxes make it a little harder to know who's working on what before they've completed it. That's for sure. But yeah. Okay, so
if you look at, I don't know, if you want to start with the cop, but go ahead.
Oh, did you want to talk about something else, or what were you gonna say?
No, I was going to say you could either take the path of like reading the Rubocop docs, or we could just like look at some of the examples, like the very first one.
Oh yeah, I think I'm happy with either path. I would say I was first gonna, because you were saying let's find a cop that does something similar, and so I was thinking like, what are we even doing here? Because I had that one idea of counting the number. So the way you can count the number of abilities. Oh my gosh, I have so many tabs open that are all just the same thing. Where is it? Here. So if you can call ability map, and that will give, and then the map is a hash. So let's look at this really quick. Let's see, just to get ideas, because there's one idea, which is we actually look at the number of ability like hash keys to tell us the number of abilities there are and compare that on master versus the current. Or we can just say, like, if anybody makes a change to the group policy file and adds a line. So these are all of our abilities. And so I guess the idea here, and then if we did that map dot length, there's 353 items. And so we could say if the number goes up to 354, we raise an error. I think that's a good way to do this, but I'm open to other ideas related to like any changes made to this file.
Yeah, with the Rubocop stuff, I'm not sure how easy it is to do the thing of like comparing to the upstream. Like that's more of a contextual thing. I don't know that I've ever, maybe under the covers, but I don't know if I've seen a cop that does that, because you could have any, like the way Rubocop works, it like runs in the context of a file, runs your rules and gives you a warning. And like that would, if you're on a detached, SHA or head or something, it's like, and it has no context, it would just be failing. There's nothing you could do about it.
Yeah. So we could
checking if a file got changed is more like something that you would do with Danger.
Okay. I guess the other, like the dumbest approach in terms of like easiest, would be to just hard code the current number of policies and then raise if the number changes, and then force the person, anyone who removes a policy, to change that number.
Another one would be hard code the list of the names, like of the classes. And then if they add one that doesn't exist, then you throw an error. But like it's fine for them to not exist.
Okay, well we can do that.
Then that would be all stuff contained in the cop.
Okay, I like that idea. So we just do map dot keys. Just get like kind of copy paste this.
Yeah, and if people refactor rename, they'd have to like, but didn't fix it, they would have to go and rename the cop, but yeah,
That's fine.
that would be their problem.
Okay. That works for
And
me.
this would also help with the removing one policy and adding one policy.
Okay, great. I love that. So, anyone have a vote for looking at the Rubocop docs or versus looking at our existing cops?
The only one I've ever written or looked at is like, you can like match on certain classes or certain patterns, I guess. Like just looking at sort of a second one under API, like a cop API, grape array, missing coerce.
Grape array. Okay.
Like at the bottom of that one, I think there's like on class.
Okay, sorry. On class.
I think maybe that. Yeah, grape API instance, like if you drill into that, maybe that is the way you tell if it.
Oh, then you have to give it a node matcher.
Yeah, there's like this little DSL of, or this pattern of matches the signature and of the class and the arity. I think there's like you would have to dig into the docs to understand how to write these sorts of rules, I think.
Although we don't really need to do a complex matcher because we're just going to have an array of symbols.
Yes, but you need to match on like the types of classes, like these permissions classes are the only ones you would want to do this check on.
Oh,
like,
just
I
just
think
in
it
the
would be a bad
class.
pattern to like check every single class everywhere. That would probably be a performance concern for.
Well, oh yeah,
well.
we wouldn't have to do that, but I don't know if we have to go into the class because we can just call it on project policy in this particular case. We can just say project policy ability map.
But I think they're only triggered when they change the file.
Oh, I see.
Right. So if they never touch project policy, that wouldn't trigger Rubocop to run. It only triggers unchanged files. So you'd have to say everything that is like, you know, a submodule of wherever the policies live. You try to write that rule. That's the ones that I would check on. And if you created a new one, then that rule would run and it would say if it's not in this, you know, allow list, then I would raise an error for this new class you wrote.
Okay, so which subdirectory are you going to add this into? Rubocop, cop.
Well, where do the what's the module hierarchy of the
at policies? At policies.
Yeah, is there any other ones around that? If you search for policies under Rubocop.
Let's see. Oops.
I see.
Oh, is it Rubocop?
Policy rule Boolean. I don't even know
if that has to
do with our policies.
Policy rule Boolean.
And then
Under
there's
GitLab sounds good
too.
then.
Yeah, those two.
Okay. Your little faces keep being in the way of my code. Okay. Subjects for Boolean operators on Roblox.
You could do the collapse thing where it only shows one little window.
Yeah, I should just do that. Yeah, it's kind of nice to see you, but then I need to see the code too. Okay, so the way this is looking at, how is this matching to a policy file only? It doesn't look like it is.
You could try to have a look at the code reuse because I had a look at it and it's checking the path of the file, it looks like, and then it's also checking accessing the instance of the class inside that file, maybe. So we can enumerate the keys.
In Rubocop code reuse helpers or in one of the other ones? Do you know?
There's the finder that's checking. Well, the method is inside the code reuse helpers. There's a method in finder ? And that's checking the directory, I guess.
Okay. In finder ?
Yeah, I think that just looks to see if the file is in like the finders directory.
Oh, perfect. That's what we want, I guess. or ish in
I
app directory.
wonder, it looks like the one that we were looking at, the policy rule has a return on line 39 that it looks at lines that have that rule, like a method, it's using that rule, a method called rule. And that's how it's
Oh.
figuring out that it's policy.
Ah, okay. Okay, cool.
I don't
didn't
know if that
before.
will work exactly
That
for
makes-
what we need. I wonder if what Marco
Well-
suggested with that and combined with that.
Yeah, we want it to be specifically for project policy. We might want this for like a few different, like for group policy as well, for example, but I think we could start with just project policy. So we wouldn't want it to be on any rule method. But we could, it seems like if we use this in finder method, which then is in app directory, like there's probably name of
Yeah, you
constant.
get like the in-app directory. Like if you go back to the in-app directory, you just pass the name of the directory.
In app.
Like these should all be under like app policy or something, right? So you would unline
Yes,
the second parameter, you just pass the directory name. 'Cause that's
totally.
what it should
Okay.
all be.
Yeah. So if anybody made a change to, but we only want it for project policy RB. We don't need to run this cop for any change in the policies directory.
No, that's what I'm saying you do. Like it has to trigger on the files that are modified. Like would project policy actually be modified itself in this scenario?
Yes, it's so.
Okay. I don't really
project
understand
policy
about
being yeah. I mean, I hardly do, but project policy itself would have to be modified for us to be adding a new ability to project policy.
Okay, if that's the case, then it would just match only that file.
Okay. So we decided before we could add this to GitLab, right? So Rubocop, cop, GitLab, project policy. I don't know. Is that a good name?
Like it's going to be what the name of the copy is. So like whatever you want to people to use when they disable this and ignore it. That's what you're coming up with here, right?
Group project. Marco, maybe you have a good idea. Group project consolidation. Namespace something.
Project group. No. Yeah, consolidation is nice. I don't know how to put the other parts.
The other parts, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, I like that.
Okay, how about policy consolidation.
Like group project policy, maybe just something like that. And then there'll be, if we do the same thing for other types of policies that we need to clean up, there'll be other ones.
Okay.
Most rules are like, they're not like an imperative or have a verb in them. They're just like some
They're just descriptive.
category.
Yeah. Okay. So it looks like we do some stuff up here. And then we make a class, group project. This is when I want AI to write my code for me. I shouldn't have to do all this typing. Okay.
Oh, yeah, you should. I've been using Copilot for like going on a year now. I love it so much. It's changed the way I write code.
Yeah. Which editor are you using it in your editor?
I'm a JetBrains person.
Okay. So you're in it. I haven't actually like tried to use this. You can integrate it with Ruby
You can do
or
VS Code
JetBrains
too if you want. Oh yeah, it works great in JetBrains.
Okay. Yeah, all the really cool IDs I've tried to use, and then like there are just so many features I get. But I think those would
Instead
help
of
me.
preparing with me, I'm glad to evangelize you on how an idea can change your life.
Okay. Okay, great.
I'll give you a tour, and I have like if you go to my GitLab profile page and my README, there's a link to my workstation setup, and in there is links to exactly how I set up my Ruby mine and configure everything, which is like
Oh, great.
not a lot. I mostly use everything out of the box, but
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Visual Studio Code for the win.
No, that I prefer an IDE, not a text editor. Oh, sorry. Ironically, I'm on the team that is making our VS Code our IDE.
Well,
Wow.
I actually was able to set up debugging on Visual Studio Code, so I was able to debug backend stuff on that.
Yeah, it's great. Like I've used IDEs basically almost since there there were IDEs, the early days of Visual Age. But the thing I like most about JetBrains is when I change ecosystems, like I'm writing Go, which I don't know, like I'm very productive because I completely understand the editor environment. I don't have to find all the plugins and stuff. Or whenever I change ecosystems, I just use JetBrains flavor for that, and I know my way around, even though I don't know the language.
That's cool.
By the way, I think the base class is wrong. Should it be Rubocop cop base?
Oh, you're right. Thank you. Love to pair. I was gonna say, does anyone know if we should be using on class or on block here without looking further into it?
Like the IDE would have underlined that in red for you.
Yeah.
Would have told you.
I know. I'm a dinosaur here. Gotta modernize my ways. So do we think we use on class or on block, or do we have to go to the docs now?
I think that's like a. Are we in the helper here, or this is the actual cop? I think that's like if you want
Finder
to trigger it for a given block or the whole class. I'm not sure.
def node search. Excuse me while I close this door. Okay. So are you saying that both of these should be different, or
what is the check we're actually doing?
The check I want to do is if there's a change made to the file app policies, project policy RB, run this cop.
Like what change though? That's what
any change.
No, but like to write the rule, we have to like drill down and say like we're gonna look at like you have to write the rule to pass or fail. So like wherever in the file.
So the rule would be if this ability map, if the keys don't match a hard-coded array that we're going to add.
So ability map is a class method. So it would be like on node and whatever the Rubocop DSL is like to match that class method, then you would I don't know, maybe I honestly I don't know. This is the point at which like I would break down and go do a Rubocop tutorial.
Okay.
Yeah, I looked around myself and I couldn't see if there's a way to like scope it to a specific class.
Okay.
There's a Rubocop rule development guide on GitLab.
Oh, great. In docs? Rubocop, creating new Rubocop rules. Wow, thank you.
I know you also need to have it with a grace period. So that's, I know that. I remember when that was added.
Oh, okay.
So this is probably like general rules for how we do it, but like just basically you might just want to read spend 15 minutes or a half hour with the Rubocop docs themselves and the tutorial to understand.
Yeah.
Oh, they do have a section on node patterns.
Yeah.
That might be helpful. And there's even like a script. What's AST for?
You know, I reviewed a few.
Tree,
like I reviewed a few. Yeah, I think I approved this MR. I remember looking at this and saying, "What is this?" Okay, cool. So this is how you do the matching.
All right, I feel bad bailing right when we're digging into the docs, but I do need to try to do something today.
No, it's okay. We're near the end of the time anyways. This is a good start.
Yeah, I think we can finish up. But thanks for all the good discussion, everyone. This is cool.
Yeah.
I want to see what gets created out of this.
Yeah, I'll work on this now. Node patterns.
I feel good and sad because it's just more technical that needs to get cleaned up.
Yeah, we're gonna do it. It's gonna get cleaned up.
Hope springs eternal.
Yeah, I feel like if you push, it will, you know what I mean? It will get done. But-
All right. Thanks for all your help.
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah. Thanks
See
for
you
trying
next
to do the
time.
right thing. Good job.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.